Alright folks, how do you win arena matches? Well, let's start with what kind of arena match you are playing. I personally enjoy playing 2v2s and 3v3s with no summons. The ones that have summons are a lot of fun, but they get a little crazy, and I'll tell you, I got in one where it was 2 different people on the other team in a 3v3, and 2 of the people had Mimic Tears throwing fireballs where their build was just, you know, basically 1 to 2 shot fireballs. And so there were 4 fireballs being thrown around the arena at any given time, and I said, nope, I've had enough of that. It's fun to mess with, you know, fun for a little joke here and there, fun for a switch up, but I much prefer the more, I don't want to say it's necessarily more skill based, but yeah, it's probably a little more skill based when you win the 2v2 and 3v3, because if you just don't have the right summon in the other ones, then it's not fun. Duels, you know, we'll talk about duels maybe another time. I would say, and on how to win duels, I guess, but they're not necessarily my favorite. And the reason they're not my favorite is because they just get a little too try-hard for me. I'm all for trying kind of hard, but I'm not. Well, one, I'm playing on PlayStation here. I don't know if I've said that before, but I'm playing on PlayStation. I'm not using cheat engine. I don't get drops from other players. Everything I've gotten, I've farmed for or just gotten on New Game Plus, etc., etc. And if you get into a duel against someone who's got all those drops, or that has a cheat engine and so has unlimited consumables, then you're at a massive disadvantage. I mean, consumables can really make, you know, change the tide of things in these fights. And in duels, for me, when someone is switching talismans, you know, they're running away from you to switch talismans, and they're running back, and then they you know, are using quick step and bloodhound step, and it's you know, with a fast weapon, so you're almost invincible. If you're using like a rapier with quick step, you're literally invincible. Like, I don't think it's even possible to hit you unless you get lucky and trade at the exact right time. But if you're on a latent connection, then you're literally impossible to hit. So that stuff just gets a little on my nerves. You know, I'll play duels here and there, and sometimes I'll get into it for, you know, an hour or something, and I'm like, alright, I've had enough of this. So I pretty much stay on 2v2, 3v3 most of the time. And I just think they're the most fun, personally. And 3v3s can sometimes get a little out of hand, especially if you have one teammate that's not as good, then it gets really out of hand. If you have 2 teammates that are not good against 3 that are pretty good, then you're just going to get demolished, and there's not much you can do at that point. But in a 2v2, you can still save it a little bit, unless the other players are just really good and your team is just really bad. But how do you win these things? Well, first off, it's pretty obvious, but burst damage is king, and having a good combination of melee burst damage as well as a ranged attack of some kind that does a good amount of damage, I think, is really the go-to strategy. Now let's talk about this build that I'm using right now, the Sumo build. So he's got high poise. I'm running 101 poise. Extremely important for any invader is pretty high poise. If you're running around as a light roll invader with low defense, you know, you can be good at that, but I think you're going to lose a higher percentage of fights than if you were running a high poise build. I mean, depending on your playstyle, but for my playstyle, certainly, I'm an aggressive player, and I like to get in there and fight, and so Poise is king. I'm not one of those that attack, run away, attack, run away, attack, run away typically. I like to kind of get in there and trade and do some, you know, dodge timing and see who's better at that. But the attack, run away stuff, that's just not for me. I don't enjoy it. So for me, Poise is huge. And then so on this build, I've got massive damage coming from the 2 Guardian Swordspears I'm using. Obviously, dual wielded things I think are over-tuned, and I think they'll likely get a nerf in the next patch that comes out. So this is patch 1.08 for any reference. If you're, I don't know if I'll have it in the notes of the video or not, but just something to keep in mind. And I've got these as keen infused, and so they're doing all physical damage. So one, physical damage just seems to hit harder, especially if you've got the same AR total than if you were to have split damage, so that's important to know. So physical damage, I would say, is almost always best if you can have it. And then not only is that better, but you have the ability to buff the weapon with any kind of consumable or spell that can buff a weapon. So really like a double bonus here. If you can go with heavy infused or keen infused, I'd say that's your best option to get the best damage. And so on this build, I've got one, I'm dual wielding, so I've got attack mix-ups as well, and that's incredibly important for any build, is attack mix-ups, because that's how you're going to get hits on people. One, this build, I think the reason it's so good is I've got massive roll catch ability here, where I can, if someone is just panic rolling, I can hit them with a running R1 very easily, because it comes out so quick. This halberd is, I would say, the best halberd because it has extremely quick attacks for people that are running to the side. Like a big way to counter a standard halberd is, they're like the Banished Knight halberd, for example, which is probably the second best halberd, is that you can just run sideways and kind of strafe attacks if you have good connection. And that kind of halberd, if you're not playing locked on, that is, you can almost not dodge and still be able to get around that halberd. Whereas this halberd, when you swing just an R1 standing still, it goes around your body, so the person that's trying to kind of, you know, dodge in towards you is going to have a harder time dodging, because they're dodging in towards you to attack instead of rolling away, which is a good strategy against halberds. But this one's good because I can just spam R1. This R1 comes out incredibly fast on these kind of halberds, and then you know, I'm catching the people that are rolling around me, not just away from me on the standing R1. So one, I've got that. Two, I've got mix-up, so I can do a running L1. Sometimes if people are expecting the running R1, they don't expect that second swing, and it catches them off guard, and I'll hit them with that. I've obviously got jump attack, so I've got the Claw Talisman on. That's my big burst damage. And so a way you win in the arena is, if you know, basically going in behind people's backs, and I think that's pretty obvious, especially if you're a melee build, but also if you're a mage build. You want to be hitting people that are not looking at you, because that's how you're going to, you know, connect with the most people. And that sounds obvious, but you don't see a lot of people doing that. You see a lot of people fighting head-on, and you know, in arena matches, especially 2v2s and 3v3s here, it's all about the element of surprise and using the whole arena to your advantage. So if you know, playing unlocked is crucial. So if you don't know how to play unlocked, check out my video on that. I think it's got some good tips on it. But if you do know how to play unlocked, you know, staying unlocked most of the time, unless you're attacking, is good, because one, you can look around the arena and see what's going on. Like, knowing is power here, and so knowing where everyone is at all times and knowing who's fighting. Like, if you've got a 2v3 advantage because you just killed somebody, you should instantly be going in to help one of your teammates kill the other player, ideally running at their back so that they don't see you coming and hitting them for massive damage, such as a dual wield jump attack at this, you know, at this current state. So making sure that you're playing unlocked, and if you're in like a little 1v1 fight in this kind of match, you really want to, after a couple seconds, make sure you're checking the position of every other player so that no one's coming up on your back. And then if someone else is near turned around, an enemy is near turned around, you can sneak up on their back and just leave your little one-on-one for a second, go attack that player, then you and your teammate have another, you know, kill that player ideally, and then you and your teammate have an advantage. So yeah, make sure you're always checking the arena and checking your own back, because that's how you stay alive, and that's how you win, is by staying alive, basically. And so another point there is that if you hear someone die in the arena, you should always be, as soon as you get a chance, turn and see who it was. Like if it was your teammate that died, then you need to make sure you're catching the position of where the enemy was. So just paying attention to your surroundings is crucial. And so how do you pay attention to your surroundings? Well, you got to be able to play unlocked, and you got to be able to rotate the camera while you're running. And so I got videos on both of those. The tips to invade, and then the controller video I put out fairly recently has some discussion on how you can run around and look around at the same time. So check both of those out if you get a chance. But yeah, so winning the arena. Let's cover what we've gone over so far. We've got making sure you've got a good build that's got attack mix-up, very important. If you're playing a melee build, I would say it's best to go with Poise. If you're playing a spellcaster, obviously the light roll right now is really good. But I don't think it's necessarily ideal unless you're throwing those giant flame balls around. I still think if you get up against good melee players, you're going to be at a disadvantage because they can dodge time your fireball, and you know, against good players, melee is almost always king, I would say. But then yeah, so we got attack mix-ups, good poise, I would say, if you're on a melee build, and then making sure you have a tool to roll catch the people that are getting away, and then making sure you're always paying attention to your surroundings in the arena, checking where the other players are at every few seconds, and not playing locked on 100% of the time. So then one of the main last things to talk about is, you know, what Ashes of War are you going to equip? So on this build, I'm running dual here, and so you can item swap or hard swap to different things if you're good at that. But if you're not good at that, you want, you know, something that one or two good Ashes of War equipped. And so on this one, I've got on my main hand Piercing Fang, which is a great attack mix-up. So the timing is different. So if I press the button and someone reaction rolls instantly, they're going to get hit by Piercing Fang based on the timing. And so that's good for attack mix-up. And then in my left hand, I've got the Lightning Bolt. And so that's obviously a great ranged option for someone that turns their back on me and runs away, or just finishing someone off from a distance. And so I've basically got all options here: attack from a distance, attack at melee range, roll catch, and burst damage, all in one build. And so that's why it's the best. If you enjoyed this, I hope you take a second to like and subscribe to the video. Check out a few of the other videos, especially the ones on tips to invade, or some of the other Sumo videos. I got some fun commentary ones and some general good tips for invading in PvP. Adios.